The first car rolled off the truck just after sunrise, its rusted frame screaming as it hit the gravel, and with it came the quiet collapse of a man who had already lost too much. Ryan Qureshi stood in the doorway of his small, weather-beaten garage, wiping grease onto an already stained rag, staring at what looked less like a delivery and more like a graveyard being dumped at his feet. The sky was pale gold, the kind of morning that usually carried hope, but today it felt like a cruel joke. The flatbed truck unloaded another lifeless vehicle, then another, until 5 broken shells sat scattered across his yard like abandoned dreams. No explanation. No courtesy. Just a signed paper stamped with a corporate logo and a short message, "Dispose as agreed." Before we go further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that remind us of the strength hidden in ordinary people, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel, Echoes the Stories. You never know whose story might change your heart today. Ryan was not a man who had expected much from life anymore. At 38, his days were defined by routine and survival. His wife had passed away 3 years earlier after a sudden illness that drained both their savings and his sense of certainty. Since then, everything had revolved around keeping his small garage alive and raising his 7-year-old son, Samir, who still sometimes asked why his mother didn't come home anymore. The garage itself was modest, barely more than a tin-roofed shelter with cracked concrete flooring and a fading sign that read, Qureshi Auto Repairs. It had once been a place full of chatter, regular customers, and steady work. But over time, larger workshops and corporate chains had taken over, leaving Ryan with scraps, small repairs, occasional tune-ups, and long stretches of waiting. This delivery wasn't something he had asked for. Weeks earlier, a corporate representative had visited, offering a small payment if Ryan agreed to dispose of some old vehicles from their company fleet. It sounded simple enough at the time. Scrap them, sell whatever parts he could, and make a bit of extra money. He had said yes without thinking too deeply about it. He needed the cash. Samir's school fees were overdue, and the landlord had already given him one warning. But now, standing in front of what looked like irreparable junk, Ryan realized the truth. These cars weren't just old, they were wrecked beyond what seemed salvageable. Engines missing, interiors gutted, frames bent. It wasn't disposal. It was abandonment. Samir came out barefoot, rubbing his eyes, his small figure framed by the morning light. He looked at the pile of cars with curiosity instead of despair, tilting his head as if trying to understand a puzzle. Ryan forced a smile, but inside, a storm was rising. He wondered if he had just signed up for more failure. The days that followed were heavy. Customers were scarce, and the presence of those broken cars only seemed to emphasize his situation. He tried to dismantle one, but even the parts that should have held value were damaged or outdated. It felt like he had been handed someone else's burden. Yet, something shifted quietly. It started with Samir, who began spending more time in the garage after school. The boy would sit on an overturned crate, watching his father work with intense focus. One afternoon, Samir picked up a small piece of metal, turning it over in his hands, asking what it was. Ryan explained it was part of a carburetor, though it was too damaged to be used. Samir didn't seem disappointed. Instead, he asked what it used to do. That question lingered. For the first time in weeks, Ryan didn't just see scrap. He saw stories. Each piece had once belonged to something functional, something alive. Something that had purpose. The next morning, instead of trying to salvage parts for resale, Ryan approached the cars differently. He began experimenting. Combining parts from different vehicles, testing connections that wouldn't normally make sense. It was slow, frustrating work, but it sparked something he hadn't felt in a long time, curiosity. Days turned into weeks. The garage floor became a chaotic blend of metal, wires, tools, and half-assembled mechanisms. Samir became his silent assistant, handing him tools, holding parts in place, asking questions that sometimes led to unexpected ideas. Ryan wasn't just fixing cars anymore. He was creating. The first success came quietly. A small engine, pieced together from 3 different vehicles, sputtered to life. It wasn't powerful, and it certainly wasn't pretty, but it worked. The sound filled the garage like a heartbeat returning after a long silence. That moment changed everything. Word began to spread, slowly at first. A neighbor mentioned that Ryan had managed to rebuild something from scrap. Then someone else came by, curious. Soon, people were bringing in old vehicles, asking if he could do something with them instead of scrapping them entirely. Ryan didn't promise miracles. But he tried. Each project became a challenge. Each success built his confidence. He started documenting his work, taking pictures, sharing them online through a simple page Samir helped him create. The posts were raw and unpolished, but they told a story of transformation, of turning what was discarded into something functional again. One post went viral. It showed a car that had once been considered completely unusable, now restored into a unique, hybrid machine. It wasn't perfect, but it ran. And more importantly, it symbolized possibility. Messages flooded in. People were inspired. Some wanted their own cars rebuilt. Others simply wanted to share their appreciation. Among them was someone unexpected. The same corporation that had dumped those cars. Their CEO, Ferris Hamdan, had seen the post. He recognized the vehicles. What had been meant as disposal had become something entirely different. Intrigued, he decided to visit the garage in person. When Ferris arrived, he didn't come with the arrogance Ryan had expected. Instead, he walked through the garage quietly, observing the work, the details, the ingenuity. He saw Samir sitting nearby, proudly explaining how certain parts had been combined. Ryan felt a mix of tension and defiance. He expected criticism, perhaps even legal trouble. But what came instead was something he hadn't prepared for. Respect. Ferris admitted that the company had underestimated the value of what they had discarded. He saw potential not just in the rebuilt cars, but in Ryan's approach. What if this wasn't just a small garage operation? What if it could scale? The idea felt impossible at first. Ryan was used to thinking small, to surviving day by day. But Ferris proposed a partnership, investing in the concept, providing resources, and helping turn Ryan's methods into a larger operation focused on sustainable rebuilding. It wasn't an easy decision. Ryan spent nights thinking about it, weighing the risks. He had been let down before. Trust didn't come easily anymore. But then he looked at Samir, who had become a part of this journey, who had watched something broken turn into something meaningful. He said yes. The transformation wasn't instant. It required hard work, long hours, and learning skills Ryan had never needed before. But slowly, the garage expanded. More workers joined. More vehicles were brought in, not just as scrap, but as opportunities. What had once been a dumping ground became a hub of innovation. The rebuilt cars gained attention not just locally, but nationally. People admired the concept of giving new life to what had been discarded. It wasn't just about cars anymore. It was about resilience. Within 2 years, the operation had grown into a company valued at over $1 million. But for Ryan, the real success wasn't measured in money. It was in the mornings when Samir walked into the garage with excitement instead of uncertainty. It was in the knowledge that something once seen as worthless had become a source of hope, not just for him, but for others. If this story has touched your heart so far, take a moment to engage with the video, like it, share it, and let others feel the same inspiration. And here's a special request before we reach the end: comment the word rebuild if you believe that nothing in life is ever truly beyond repair. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of orange and gold, Ryan stood outside the now expanded workshop. The same yard that once held broken shells was now filled with vehicles in various stages of transformation. There was noise, movement, life. Samir stood beside him, holding his hand. Ryan thought back to that morning, the sound of metal hitting gravel, the weight of uncertainty, the feeling of being overwhelmed. He realized that what had seemed like the lowest point had actually been the beginning. Sometimes, life doesn't give you opportunities wrapped in hope. Sometimes, it dumps them in your yard disguised as junk. And what you choose to do with them, that's where everything changes. If this story stayed with you, don't scroll away silently. Share your thoughts, your feelings, your own stories. Because somewhere out there, someone might need to hear that even the most broken beginnings can lead to something extraordinary.